Hello lovelies, in this video the brilliant Dr. Operator is going to be going through controlling blood glucose for your GCSE biology. Now there are lots of hormones, lots of things go up, lots of things go down in this, so please make sure you make very careful notes and you can annotate these with drawings of graphs.
Controlling blood glucose. Okay, so let's have a quick recap of carbohydrate digestion because we're going to need to be able to explain and understand this in order to explain how we control the level of blood glucose. So starch is the long, large molecule that we know is broken down by the enzyme amylase into glucose. And this happens obviously as part of digestion. So that's the how we get glucose. Where does it happen? It happens in the mouth and the small intestine. Remember, you have amylase in your saliva in the mouth, and then the pancreas secretes the amylase into the small intestine. And then your glucose is absorbed into the bloodstream through the walls of the small intestine, so through the villi in the small intestine into the bloodstream. This is why after you've eaten a meal, your blood glucose level is going to increase. Okay, and that's really the bit that we need to understand for this, because obviously if we're controlling the levels of blood glucose, we need to have examples of when blood glucose levels are going to increase and when they're going to decrease. The main one is that they're going to increase after you've eaten a meal. So here's a little graph showing the hours after someone has eaten and showing their blood glucose level on the y-axis. So after a meal, your blood glucose levels will increase. And you can see there you've got quite a sharp, steep increase in the curve. But your body can't let that level become too high. So they can't keep letting that level increase and absorb more and more glucose into the blood because of homeostasis. And we need to make sure that we can reduce it so it stays around the optimum level. Remember, partly because obviously our cells need the glucose for respiration. And so they are going to use some of it up. But we can't have too much glucose in the blood because that can start causing osmotic effects on our cells. So homeostasis will work to bring that blood glucose level down, as well as your cells absorbing some glucose for respiration. So if you did exercise right after eating, that would help to bring the levels down as well. The pancreas is the organ that controls blood glucose levels. It has receptors which detect high or low blood glucose, and it secretes hormones into the blood to change the levels. It can increase or decrease blood glucose levels. Decreasing blood glucose levels. So first of all, blood glucose levels in the body rises. This probably is because you've just eaten some food. The increase in blood glucose is detected by receptors in the pancreas. So the pancreas cells release the hormone insulin into the blood. The insulin travels in the blood to the liver. The insulin binds to receptors on the liver, which causes the response from the liver. So the liver here is the effector. What the liver does is it absorbs glucose from the blood and it converts it into glycogen. Remember, glycogen is how we store glucose in the body. So because the liver absorbs and removes glucose from the blood, it lowers the blood glucose levels. So if we think about our response cycle that we looked at, we've got receptors are in the pancreas. They secrete the hormone insulin, which carries the information to the liver, which is the effector, and that responds to the change. So the increase in blood glucose, the response is to lower the blood glucose, and the liver does that by absorbing glucose from the blood. So in our cycle here, the pancreas is the coordinator because although it contains the receptors, it's the one coordinating the response by releasing the hormone. Increasing blood glucose levels. Now, only really higher tier students need to be able to explain this in detail. So your blood glucose levels drop or decrease, for example, after you've done some exercise. Receptors in the pancreas will detect this change. The pancreas cells release the hormone glucagon into the bloodstream. The glucagon travels to the liver. And this time it does the opposite. So glucagon binding to the receptors on the liver cells cause them to start breaking down glycogen into glucose. So remember, insulin caused us to absorb glucose from the blood and then convert it to glycogen. This time we need to increase blood glucose levels, so we're breaking down that glycogen store into the glucose. The liver will then release that glucose into the blood, and therefore the blood glucose levels will increase. So this time we're breaking down glycogen and we're releasing glucose into the blood instead of absorbing the glucose and making the glycogen. So again, we've got our cycle. So the receptors in the pancreas again. This time the pancreas is releasing the hormone glucagon, but that's how it's sending the information. That's traveling to the liver, and this time the liver is releasing glucose into the blood in order to increase the levels. So we've still got the pancreas as the coordinator and the liver as the effector. So this all happens as a homeostatic response that you don't have to think about, your body just does it. In people where this doesn't happen properly or normally, then we have a condition called diabetes. So diabetes is a condition caused by the fact that the body cannot control the blood glucose levels in this way properly. Sometimes this means patients have to check their own blood glucose levels because maybe the receptors are not working, or you need to know how much blood glucose levels are. And then sometimes that means they have to inject their own hormones into the blood themselves because their pancreas isn't able to do that for them.
Ouch! This is why in some videos I explain scratches.